Hello everyone, and welcome to Cap Times Idea Fest 2023, where we spend 1 week and nearly 24 virtual and in-person sessions with 40 speakers talking about the most important things in Wisconsin. My name is Allison Garfield, and I cover local government for the Cap Times, and I am so pleased to be here moderating this panel on what we throw away. We have 3 all-star panelists here with us, comprised of community leaders and experts to talk about Madison and Dane County's efforts to reduce landfill usage and create a new economy around waste. So we have Sujata Gautam, the Sustainability Engagement Coordinator for the Dane County Department of Waste and Renewables, Brian Johnson, the Recycling Coordinator and Public Information Officer for the City of Madison, and Lorenza Zabel, the Program Manager for Sustain Dane here. I am really excited to get into this and do a little trash talk. I just want to thank our sponsor for this panel, Forward Theater, for their support. One of the reasons we landed on this topic is because of Forward Theater's current production, The Garbologists, which places 2 very different people from entirely different worlds in the shared setting of a New York City garbage truck. I won't give any spoilers, so if you want to learn more, the production runs through September 24th. All right, so I'm excited to learn more about how trash and waste is changing and what that means for us here locally. And I guess to get started, let's just kick it off with you guys introducing yourselves. Yeah, Brian, why don't you kick off these introductions?
No, so my name is Brian Johnson. I'm the Recycling Coordinator and Public Information Officer here for the Streets Division. I have a role. I'm not super impressive on paper. I just introduced myself like that. That's just who I am. I'll keep it simple. I'll let Lorenza and Sujata make themselves sound way more impressive than I am. So I'll keep it brief.
I'll go next. So I'm Lorenza Zabel. Brian, by the way, you are impressive. And I work at a local nonprofit called Sustain Dane as the program manager, as Allie said. And at Sustain Dane, I just want to give a little intro in case people are unfamiliar with us as an organization. We're a nonprofit. We provide education and programs to the public and private sectors that help people successfully prioritize and implement sustainability actions. That's a broad category. And so I like to categorize our work in 3 buckets. We have education for climate solutions, which is primarily my role, energy efficiency in affordable housing, multifamily housing. And then the 3rd bucket is food waste reduction and increasing recycling, both broadly in the county, but also in schools locally.
All right, and I'll round us off here with panel introductions. So my name is Sujata Gautam. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Sustainability Engagement Coordinator with the Dane County Department of Waste and Renewables. And our organization is responsible for the management and operation of Dane County's landfills, as well as renewable natural gas facilities. And that's where we're essentially taking the dirty trash gas that our landfills generate, cleaning it and turning it into clean, renewable natural gas. We also are responsible for the management of a household hazardous waste and electronics recycling collection program called Clean Sweep, a construction and demolition recycling facility, and various other recycling programs. So we do a lot more than just managing a landfill. As far as my specific role goes as a sustainability engagement coordinator, I have the super fun job of getting to talk to folks like you, Allison, and just sharing with the community in general the story of what happens to our trash. And we share that through our monthly public tours that we host, community presentations, as well as with our Trash Lab mobile educational exhibit. In addition to that outreach and education hat I wear, I also have the fun job of getting to work on projects to advance how we sustainably manage materials here in Dane County.
You see, that's why I wanted them to talk more. Way much. I mean, we're just the people. We plow the snow, we pick up the stuff, but there's so much more to say than like what we do here at the Streets Division. They're super cool people. They deserve to talk more than me.
No, you all are here because you are super interesting and exciting people. Each of you, Brian, I don't want to hear it, and know so much about this kind of area of waste and renewables and sustainability. So yeah, I'm really excited to ask you guys some questions and just have a fun conversation. Yeah, I guess let's dive into the core of this panel, which is what we throw away, right? So, I think one of the things that I'm seeing as the local government reporter in my coverage of what we throw away, and that just has been noted to, the Cap Times, is that our relationship with trash generally is changing. So how are each of you seeing this and waste itself evolve in each of your respective roles? And we can start with Lorenza.
Yeah, so as part of my role, I teach with Brian a course called Recycle Better. And through that course, I think we've had well over 1,000 participants now over the 3 years that we've ran the course together. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from participants and from our community on how they feel recycling is changing, or like how they feel waste is changing. So we see a lot of interest from the community in it as a subject to begin with. So like awareness is certainly growing, that awareness of the fact that certain things aren't recyclable, or just awareness of the fact that the system is not quite what a lot of people think. And I think this started, we talk about this in the course, I think this started in around 2018 when China changed their importing rules. And then the next year when a bunch of other countries changed their importing rules for our recycling. So we used to ship a bunch of waste over to other countries to process. And basically in around 2018, they were no longer accepted. So we had to figure out what to do with those waste streams. So those kind of largest recycling markets, I think it was 70% of the plastics recycled in the US at that time, those markets dried up. So we had more domestic supply than demand. And we also had a lot of news stories coming out about recycling being a sham or a lie or having some serious issues. And so more of public attention was turned to what made up the system and how we could, as individuals, recycle better. And
there is always like that one family member who's like, recycling doesn't matter. And you're like, I don't know. I don't think that's true.
Well, we all have that one uncle that we're always a little bit embarrassed about, or the one aunt too. I guess we don't want to, we all have that one person, but I think just in general, like just the stuff, as the stuff in our life changes, as technology changes, things just shift around a lot. And I think for me too, just like that's what it is. Like as technology changes, the stuff, like as basically it's either packaging, and also as our life becomes more complicated, or stuff becomes more complicated, the way to handle the waste doesn't necessarily keep up with the speed in which the materials change. Like that, the products aren't always designed with the cradle to cradle sort of design in mind. It's sort of the cradle to use to we'll figure out how to handle it later sort of design. And then and then you wind up with like these repercussions of that sort of thinking, where it's like speed to market to buy it to then, it's for South Park fans, it's sort of that underpants gnome sort of thinking, where it's that sort of like that middle ground where it's like, but the profit part, we got that part figured out, but like the piece of it. And we see that where there's serious repercussions though, by just shrugging our shoulders and not knowing what to do with this stuff, where it's not just sort of that, like the environmental harm of it, but we see it a lot where like lithium batteries are a big problem. I want to make that point clear, because here in like Wisconsin, we've had 3 very serious like fires at recycling recovery facilities because we've had these lithium batteries that are winding up in recovery facilities where they don't belong. Never, ever, ever put anything with the battery in your recycling cart because they can burn these facilities now. There was a big one in Milwaukee. There was a massive one in like Whitewater, another one in Portage, Wisconsin, that all happened this year, very likely because there were something with a lithium battery that got put into the recycling cart. And it's likely because there's these things that are in our lives now that didn't used to be there. We don't want to know don't really know what to do with these things, but we want to do the right thing with it. We know we have to recycle it, so we're putting it into this recycling cart at our house, even though it's not the right thing to do with it. And so it's, it's this technology that's getting ahead of the systems or infrastructure to handle this stuff the right way. And I think that's where a lot of that change is happening. And like, how do we keep up with this constant changing of material, where we're constantly pushed to buy things, and like that processing part is just struggling to keep up with that material. That's where I kind of see it, is how do we keep up on the back end of it, where like Sujata, myself, and Lorenzo, that's where kind of we're living, is like how we're constantly playing catch up with this changing front end. Like, how do we keep up with it, with this design price? It doesn't necessarily think of poor little us on the back end. Like, how do we keep up with this stuff all the time? Because like there's serious repercussions where we're like millions of dollars of loss, and like thankfully with those 3 big fires no one was hurt, but like those were catastrophic fires that are happening, and that's a worldwide problem too. It's not just here in Wisconsin that happened. Those things these big recycling fires happen a lot, and that's the big worry, because of those little bitty batteries. It could be no bigger than the size of a quarter, can set these things off. Not to start the things off on a big bummer or a downside like that, but like that's one of the things where I see the change, that relationship happening, is as all this stuff changes without that processing capability being there. But I'm rambling now, so I guess I'm sorry.
No, I think you bring up some really great points, Brian, because in some ways, when you're a professional in the waste management field, it does feel like a game of like, how can we keep up? There's like all these new products being developed and all these different types of things now that exist that we have to throw away. How are we going to manage, for example, like photovoltaic cells, or like solar panels, right? Or even electric car batteries, for example. But to sort of step back a little bit and discuss how our waste stream specifically has been changing over the years. From the waste management landfill hat perspective, I can share that our tonnages of trash have continued to grow steadily across the years, and we're currently receiving about 750 tons of trash daily. So it's quite a bit of material that we're seeing at our site, and we're open about 6 days a week. And to put in a little bit more of a digestible factoid, that is about 1,000 or 1,700 pounds, I should say, of waste each year per resident, according to our Dane County Climate Action Plan of waste that's produced. So that's a lot. And I think, our society sort of has developed this take, make, waste narrative that we dominantly live under. And we really want to change that from a linear narrative to a more circular narrative with how can we redesign and reuse and recycle and integrate materials back into production systems. And then as far as the makeup of the trash, I think I'll just kind of conclude with, what do we mean when we talk about trash in the first place? So we did a waste characterization study back in 2020 of our landfill that illustrates exactly what types of materials are we seeing in the waste stream. And it's everything from, things like textiles, metals, plastics, glass, soiled paper, and organic materials like food waste. And the top 3 biggest chunks of material that we see from that list is organics, which again, it consists of like food waste, diapers, etc. That's about 34% of the material in our waste stream, followed by paper, which is about 20%, and then plastic, which is about 15%. So those are the 3 biggest chunks of what we're seeing at the landfill.
Is there like a weirdest thing that has ever popped up in the landfill?
Oh,
I'm curious.
I get asked this question all the time on my tours. And I would say that the most funnest thing for me was when we got a truckload of mannequin dolls come in from I'm assuming a department store was closing. So yeah, we got all of these body parts. And I took some of them out before they got into the landfill so that I could use it for our trash lab project, which is a mobile educational exhibit that we take around Dane County to explore our relationship with waste. And it was just the funniest thing to drive down the road with my car stuffed with these mannequin body parts. I got a lot of weird looks, but yeah, you never know. It's never a dull day at the landfill because you just never know what you're going to see.
Sure. For the exhibit is why you have those mannequin parts in your car. That's very convenient.
I promise.
No, one of John Welch, who's the director of the Waste and Renewables program at the landfill, told me once about a load of bread dough that they got once at the landfill as well, where they tried to it was frozen bread dough, where they tried to compact it down, but all that wound up doing was like kneading the bread dough, so it rose again in the landfill because once it warmed up and it wound up kneading everything because the landfill, the compactor is like, it looks like basically like a giant bulldozer with teeth on it. So it just wound up like kneading the whole thing. So it rose like bread dough over and over again, like, which is
Trash bread.
like, interesting. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like a giant loaf of trash bread with like a semi load of trash bread. Yeah.
Crazy. Well, I think we touched on some of this, but like one topic that we get a lot of interest in at the Cap Times is recycling. And fortunately, we have a bunch of recycling experts among us. And we talked about how there's always like one family member who's like doesn't even recycle because they're like, what's the point? There's like, it's the opposite thing in my family where whenever I go home, I have to like explain to someone why they should recycle something. They like call me the recycling police. I think it's an exaggeration. But there's, always seems to be like some confusion around like what you can and can't recycle. And in Madison, like of the materials put in Madison recycling bins this April of 2023, 18.6% weren't recyclable according to the city. So I guess, how can we recycle better? That's something people I think are always wanting to know and look into. And there's courses now for that and workshops and things. So yeah, how can people recycle better? Brian, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, the reason why you're going to bump into that confusion too is that recycling is regional, and I think that's also where the source of a lot of these news stories and where that confusion comes into is that the recycling feels like it should be a national thing, but it's not. The rules vary by state. The rules that like we have here in Wisconsin, where there's very strong and specific recycling mandates, are not the same in New York or Washington State or California or Alabama or really anywhere else. We have 50 sort of individual recycling laws. So when you travel around the country or get people that move here from out of state, which is like, we're very lucky here in Madison where we draw a lot of people from around the country, but that adds a lot of confusion because the rules are just going to be different here than what they're used to. And so really what that key is, you have to trust your local rules. Like whatever those local rules are, you just have to follow them. Our local rules, they're all available for free. If you go to cityofmadison.com/recycling, they're there. We have these free booklets called Recyclopedias. They're a little on the thick side. I agree. We try to make them as comprehensive as we can. Because they're so comprehensive, I only put them out every couple of years. We have guides on the lid of most recycling carts that tell you what to do with them. We have magnets that we give out for free. We try to make the information as freely as available as possible to try to let people know like what should go into those green carts. But some real basic things that you should do. Never bag your recycling. It's best to go loose into the cart. One thing should be 3-dimensional. So like if you're really into like flattening things as flat as you possibly can, anything that goes into that sorting system that's super flat acts like paper. So if you really like smashing your cans flat, it's probably going to act like paper. Satisfying crunch in the middle, cool. flatten them all the way, I would like, let that go. Not everything plastic can be recycled just because it's plastic, that doesn't, it's plastic containers we can recycle, not everything plastic under the sun. Also, stop putting clothes in the recycling. Or also like bed sheets in that. I mean, maybe it was because I was walking around downtown during the move out time, but I did see like one cart that was like chock full of like bedding. It was like, it had like blankets and stuff sticking out of it. It was a recycling cart. It made me so mad. Like, don't do that. Even though I know I think it's because people like, maybe it's because we have clothing drop-off sites. At our drop-off sites, we have like a Goodwill donation bin where people like, hey, they take it to the drop-off site, maybe they can put it in the cart. No, that's not the way it works. Same with like styrofoam. Don't put it in your recycling cart, or wood. Don't put it in your recycling cart. There's some things that just don't belong. That just don't belong in the cart because of the way that sorting system works. And if you don't know, just ask us. We're more than happy to help you out. Send us an email, give us a call, or check those free resources. Or also, we've, like Lorenza had mentioned, we've trained up about 1,000 people through this Master Recycler Recycling Better class over the years. Consult with one of them. There's a lot of these folks out there. We're going to keep training these people up. We're trying to get as many of these experts out there in the community as possible so we can help share this information as well, to help get more people, because there's so many of these like digital communities that may not think to ask us. That's why we're teaching these folks out there, so to get more people out there to be these sort of community experts. Because sometimes it feels weird to talk to the city. Like, do I really want to bother that nice man who talks about snow plowing on the news all the time about my recycling question? One, yeah, call me, it's fine. But two, if you don't, like, if you see someone in your neighborhood that has that Master Recycler sticker or Recycle Better sticker on their recycling card, they went through this class. That's what they were there for. They wanted to be this neighborhood resource. Ask them, that's why we wanted to train these people up to help. So whenever there are those sort of stray next door comments like, hey, what do I do with this thing? We wanted to be able to have more experts in our community to answer these questions, just because the internet is so full of bad ideas. We didn't want people just Googling things and getting the bad advice because there isn't a national advice to follow. It's all local. So we wanted to be able to get enough local experts to point people at all these free resources to kind of maybe hopefully turn the noise down a little bit and to get people to the right information at the very least.
Yeah, I'd like to add just a couple of notes from that course to that answer. So a takeaway that a lot of people like from the course is there's a 4-step method that I go over on if you've got, I call it the hover moment, because you've got like a piece of trash or maybe recycling in your hand and you're hovering over the recycling bin and you pause for a second, you're like, is this really recyclable? I don't know. So it's 4 steps. It's what is the material? First, you got to have your local guidelines on hand. So Brian mentioned the Recyclopedia. If you live in another area, you probably have local guidelines. Fitchburg has them, Middleton, Monona, Sun Prairie, everyone has some type of guideline. The Recyclopedia is great because it's really, really in depth, but have that online and then, or on hand. And then number 1 is what is the material? You identify the material. So metal, glass, paper, plastic. Step 2 is the material accepted. So that's where you open up your local guidelines. Don't go by the label on the thing. So let's say you have a plastic bottle. It'll always have the little chasing arrows on it and say that it's recyclable. By the way, they are recyclable, but you can't always go by the labels on the item. So you got to have those local guidelines. And then step 3, is it an acceptable size and shape? So that's what Brian was talking about. Paper should be flat. Everything else should be 3D. And then also larger than a sticky note. That's like about 3 inches by 3 inches. Otherwise, it gets lost in the system. And then finally, 4, is it clean? You got to clean it. if it has like food or dirt on it, it'll contaminate the rest of the recycling. So make sure it's clean, and then you place it loose in your cart. So no plastic bags, unless you live in a specific community that requires bags, which is very, very specific, but I've been running into that a lot. There are some senior centers and some multifamily apartment buildings that use bags. But for most of us, loose in the cart, no bags. Yeah, and those are that's the 4 steps of the hover moment method. And I could go on forever. I have other tips that folks found interesting, but I'll cut myself off there so we can talk more.
Yeah, you even said something that made me want to talk even more about like the labels on things, because there's like certain products that say they're recyclable, but because there are no national rules, you have to trust your local, because like there's certain toothpaste brands that say you can recycle it, but that's not true here locally. So you have to trust your local, just because they say the thing on the back of the packaging. It's like there are pizza boxes that say you can throw the whole pizza box in the recycling cart. That's not true here. The clean parts, yes, but the whole box, not the greasy cheesy parts, and not here. And so you have to be careful, and you have to follow those local rules. And so yeah, sorry. I guess I couldn't let that slip. You let the recycling guy, I had to get that off my chest, otherwise my head was going to explode.
Well, definitely we can circle back to more tips and tricks if we have some extra time at the end, because I'm sure folks are interested in all of the tips of how to recycle better. I am, for sure. I'm learning things now. So that's all super great. Did you want to add anything, Sujata, before we circle?
No, I think Brian and Lorenzo did a great job explaining it. And if we have time later, I'm happy to talk a little bit more about why is recycling different region to region, in case people are curious about that. But
absolutely. I will ask really quickly. I think I've talked to Brian about this, but I've heard the saying and kind of abide by the saying, when in doubt, throw it out. Is that should we follow that rule?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a great rule of thumb, and I'm seeing nods from Lorenzo and Brian. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to double check on that. I was like, I don't want to be following the wrong rule of that is mine. Okay. Well, one of the other aspects of this panel is sustainability. So let's maybe talk a little more about that side of things. And, I think kind of one of the more recent, I think, developments in terms of sustainability is the new sustainability campus that the county is working on, which will be alongside a new landfill, since the county has less than 10 years of capacity remaining at the current landfill. And there have been, I think, some concerns raised by the public about the location of a new landfill. And feel free to touch on that if you would like. But I want to chat a little bit about the sustainability campus part of that and what that's going to mean for our community here. So Sujata, do you want to take this one?
Yes, absolutely, Allison. This is one of my most exciting subjects I get to talk about, because it is a really exciting project. So yeah, essentially we want to build a sustainability campus co-located to our new landfill. And our vision for this sustainability campus, or sustainable business park portion of this campus, is to divert waste and create local circular economies. And so we want to accomplish that by building a campus next to this landfill that will attract reuse, repair, and recycling businesses, potentially host new waste management technologies, as well as research opportunities for some of those emerging waste streams that Brian was mentioning we have to keep up with, in terms of figuring out, like, oh, can we figure out a way to recycle this? We don't have to put it in the landfill, etc. So the intent really with this project is to design for a safe public access, education, and recreation at the site, where visitors can examine their relationship with waste, and our community overall can move towards a future where waste is not a liability, but a resource and an opportunity. So it's super exciting. And we have about 40 acres or so of the new site area that we plan to designate for building this campus. So I'm excited about the potential infrastructure we can house there to get some of the materials out of needing to go into the landfill. So for example, mattresses is something we're particularly excited about, potentially building a mattress recycling facility at our sustainability campus, because mattresses are such a nuisance in our landfill. They're very springy, so it's hard to compress them into the ground because they spring right back up. And sometimes the coils inside of them will shoot out and jam our equipment. And so it would be great to get those out of the landfill, especially considering over 80% of a mattress is recyclable. It's just quite a labor-intensive process. So we'll want to make sure that the economics and like the space needed and everything works out for it. So part of what our team is currently doing is planning, what will the development of this campus look like? What businesses should be housed there, etc. So we're working with the team of consultants on that planning, and sort of the outcome of this planning will be a master plan document we can share with the public regarding, what we will ultimately envision at this campus. So lots of exciting things there. And as far as the location of this new site, definitely acknowledge that there have been concerns about, a new landfill, and totally get that, right? Nobody typically wants to be housed near a landfill. It's sort of the not in my backyard. And we recognize that, which is why we want to be the best neighbors as possible, and make this new site, the sustainability campus and new landfill, a real asset to the community by thoughtfully designing it and being really intentional with what we're building in there to make sure it's really meeting a community need in terms of, I want to dispose of this, and now I have a place to, and it's not going to be in the landfill. As far as that specific location, there's a lot of pros for having it at the location we've chosen, which is going to be the eastern portion of the current Yahara Hills Golf Course. So the county purchased about 230 acres of that from the city of Madison, with which to build the new site. And that new site is located right across our current landfill location. So lots of pros to deciding to build our new site relatively close to our current site. It keeps hauling costs low for all the municipalities and people who rely on our current site. So they don't have to haul it super far out and then in turn raise any taxes, for example, and pass on the costs on residents that way. Also in terms of equity and inclusion, right? A lot of the waste and trash that's generated in our county comes from the Madison area. So we want to build our new site in Madison because we don't want our waste to be another community's burden to manage further out. And then having that interstate access, right off the highway makes it really easy for people to get to us. So just a few of the reasons why we're sticking pretty close to our current location for building this new site.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Who wants to go next?
Yep, the interstate access too would be a big benefit for the sustainability campus, depending on what kind of businesses and that we'd be able to attract there as well, because depending on where you're able to site other materials and what kind of businesses we can attract to come into this location, as far as just depending, let's say, just not knowing where this thing can go, but it'd be easy for us to get materials from, say, Milwaukee, because it'd be easier for them to bring material to this potential campus there because the access is way simpler there than someplace further away. And plus too, just from the city of Madison or Streets Division perspective, at least having it basically right across from its current location, it does help keep this cost down, because the further away the landfill location goes, that does increase our hauling costs from all the garbage the Streets Division collects from the city of Madison. Every mile away from the city you put the landfill, that's 2 miles further, we have to haul the material. So that raises cost, that's more fuel cost, that's more wear and tear on our vehicles and that. So that's that much more our costs go up. With also, you think of the cost for tax dollars and that we have to then allocate to our services, takes it away from every other city service that we have to pull from that kind of eats into everything else that cost wise. So this makes sort of sense to keep it as close as we can to. And Sujata mentioned the mattress thing too, and that's like kind of hammer. It's more than just mattresses. But Allison, a question for you for this panel: how many mattresses do you think we throw away in a year? If you're going to guess, going to ballpark it, what do you think?
In the city?
In the city, yeah. If you were just going to throw a number,
Like 10,000?
Yeah.
Way too high?
No, that's about right. It's about 10,000 mattresses.
Yeah,
Do you have any idea how many? I know,
it.
but like 10,000 mattresses? Do you have any idea how
No,
many?
I don't. I can't even picture what
Right?
that would look like.
Okay, and that's city of Madison. That's right around. That's not that many more than just what the streets division collects. And you think we don't collect all of the mattresses in the city of Madison. You know, you think like, I'm not certain what the campus does with their mattresses from all the dorms. I'm not 100% certain what all the hotels do whenever their mattresses turn over, which also don't come to the streets division collections. And all those apartment towers, whenever they turn over, not many of those mattresses come to us. They'll stay like internal in those towers or those commercial hauling entities. There's so many mattresses that here, that most of them going to Sujata's place there at the Dane County landfill. There's thousands and thousands of these things that you have to manage these things, and they take up a lot of airspace. You just have to, why not recycle these things? Because they take up so much space on top of being able to handle the 20-30% of our materials that go to the landfill that are food waste. That maybe it's composting, maybe it's anaerobic digestion, or something else to do. Maybe there's a way to get it, like textiles from all the clothing or stuff like that we throw away, or maybe a way to get at the plastic fraction that can't be recycled traditionally that we can get at some other way. You know, there's opportunities there possibly.
I'm also really excited about those that type of waste stream, those unusual waste streams, because part of my job, I talk to a lot of local businesses that have just odd things that they have a lot of, like canvas, unused canvas, perfectly good for, artists or something that could go to this potential reuse store or mall that the sustainability campus might have. So very excited about that. And then of course, composting, the organics management component. Our community at Sustain Dane, and I think the county broadly, is really looking for places to send food scraps and food waste. It's a huge topic right now. And so I'm really excited about that component. And right now at Sustain Dane, just a plug, until we do get that sustainability campus, Sustain Dane manages 2 food scraps drop-off locations at the East Side Farmers Market and the South Side Farmers Market. They're on Tuesdays. In the summer months. It's still going on, I think, until maybe even Halloween this year. I think we're going till Halloween. And you can just for free bring your food scraps to those locations, and we take them. Yeah, double hippo. Thanks, Brian, in the chat. So we're trying to get to, I think, 17,000 pounds, which is as much as 2 extra large hippos. I might have the numbers wrong there, but yeah, 17,000 pounds of food scraps, hopefully by the end of the year. And yeah, for free, you can bring your scraps and drop them off at the market, and we'd love to see you there.
Amazing. I like that double hippo. I don't know when I can incorporate that into any other part of my life, but I'll try now. Well, I think one of the things that is so great about having you all here is that you each, you have these, you work in different areas of our community. So you get to see how different aspects of sustainability and waste play out individually, and then also like a sense of the whole big picture too. One of the things I loved when we first met was like, you all know each other and you talk, and like there's this like, sustainability circle in Madison. But yeah, so I guess I'm curious from each of your perspectives, how do you think our municipalities are evolving their relationships with waste, and what do you think we can do better? And yeah, if Lorenza, if you want to start us off, that'd be great.
And maybe pass this to the reps of municipal, Brian or Sujata.
No one wants to go first.
Oh, no, I'm happy to share. I couldn't see if Brian had come off mute, so I was like, oh, let me go ahead then. So yeah, as far as evolving a relationship with waste, the Sustainability Campus project is one way that we are seeking to do that here in Dane County, seeking to transform our relationship with waste. I mentioned in the beginning that, the dominant narrative that we have with our materials is we're taking resources, we're making stuff, and then we're throwing it away. So it's very linear, take, make, waste. And we really want to move that towards a more circular narrative, right? Where we're thoughtfully using only what we need in terms of resources, and then thinking about the design, like Brian mentioned earlier, how are we designing this so that it can be either repaired if it's broken, or reused easily, or recycled into something else? Like, how can we think about the end of life from the very beginning of when we make an object? And it's thinking like that, and planning for systems like that help us move into a more circular narrative where we're minimizing input of raw materials and minimizing output of waste. So the Sustainability Campus is a big way that we're trying to do that by attracting opportunities at this campus to divert materials from needing to go to the landfill. And Lorenza mentioned it earlier, but one of the waste streams, in addition to just, for example, mattresses, that we're particularly excited about is organics or food waste, because, as I mentioned earlier, it makes up such a significant chunk of the material that we're seeing at the landfill. And so one of the first facilities that'll come online as a part of our Sustainability Campus project will be an organics recycling facility that the county owns. And so essentially, this facility, we're expecting it to be online about 2026, spring of 2026. We'll be able to process and accept food waste for recycling from different residential communities, commercial facilities, etc. In addition to yard waste and the more other traditionally composted materials. So we're super excited about that. And I think overall, as we're planning and designing the Sustainability Campus, we're really trying to think about how can we make a one-stop shop for people to get rid of their materials, and in a way to where it can go in this bin and it'll be recycled that way, and it'll go here and it'll be reused in that way, that sort of model. How can we build more of that? I also am just going to round out my answer by sharing, I think continuing to invest in outreach and education is going to be a really important part of this work. So continuing amazing programs like the Recycle Better program that the city of Madison and Sustain Dane have, us on our end continuing to bring people to the landfill to have more transparency around, like, wow, this is what happens to my stuff and I want to do better. Continuing to have the trash lab out in the community. I think those are going to be really important things that we can continue to do to get people to keep thinking about their relationship with waste and think about ways that we can all collectively do better.
Just to add on to that, Sujata, taking a tour of the landfill is a great experience. It's amazing to stand on the giant mound of trash, like you're on top of it at part of the tour, and just knowing that like beneath you is, some of your stuff, some things that you have yourself thrown away, and you're part of that. It really helps you feel like the kind of collective impact and feel that like your individual portion of that is there. Also, it's really beautiful, surprisingly beautiful, with all the native planting.
Thank you, we try.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to elaborate, we planted a prairie on top of the closed portion of the landfill because habitat restoration is also important to us at the county. And we recognize that before this area was a landfill, it was a farmland, and before it was a farmland, it was prairie. And so on the closed portion of the landfill, we planted about 30 acres of prairie or so up there. So it's often blooming with black-eyed Susans and other beautiful flowers during the summer.
It's a really good question. That to kind of get back to what Sujata and Lorenza had said too about the education and outreach part of it as well, where I think that's maybe not something where as like municipalities or really anybody that's involved in the waste industry, how we all need to make certain we keep evolving as well as to make that we're keeping up the best we possibly can with this education and outreach, because I don't think it's ever going to get any easier for any of us to keep this information in front of people, where I know that's something that I struggle with a lot, is trying to keep this recycling education people in front of us. So like I'll never have a big enough microphone to be able to educate all of the people that I need to here in the city of Madison. Well, our population is always changing with the influx and outflow of students that we have and stuff, things that the population that we have, but still like it's a constant challenge. And how do you balance that? How do you fund something like that? How do you like, I don't know how to TikTok. I'm not that type of person. Like how do you stay up to that? Like to stay on those top of trends, and also how do you keep this sort of like, and also when we did the Q&A interview, I mentioned like the information that I have is sort of like the vegetables. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's something that people want to have known, but not necessarily want to seek out. And so how do you communicate that kind of information in a way that's sort of whiz bang interesting enough that people want to seek out? But that's the trick with social media, is that people they want to engage with it. So you have to like create it in a way that people want to choose to find you, even though it's not like a choose to find kind of thing. And it makes the whole thing super complicated. So how do you evolve with the times and keep this communication that way? And because it's super important, especially considering things like these lithium batteries can burn down multi-million-dollar facilities if people don't do the right thing with it. So like it's so hard to. So I think whenever I was like, the whole time everyone was talking, I was like listening to Lorenzo and Sujata, but I kept thinking about this question. I'm like, how are we evolving with this? And I kept thinking about that education piece of it. Maybe that's just who I am, but like that's something where we just need where municipalities and anybody or from the counties that do their own waste collection too, from around the country, and that like where we just all need to work a little bit better. But how do we stay connected with these materials? Because it's always going to keep changing. The stuff's going to keep adapting. And then how do we stay connected to our local resources in some way? Because that's how this is always going to be handled, is going to be through your local things, and to not get disconnected, to not get too like absorbed in whatever national news or whatever those things are, to get too absorbed in that, to stay connected to your locals so you know what the right thing is to do where you live, so you do the right thing so you don't become a problem, so you have that sort of sense of shared responsibility or local ethic to do the right thing with the stuff that you're doing in your life. So whenever you're standing on the landfill, that you know like you didn't contribute too much to this pile that you're standing on. Sujata, what with the landfill, what highest point is that in the county? Do you know, is that like the second highest point in Dane County, or is it
Yeah, that's a great question. It'll be one of the highest points in Dane County, actually. And even currently, if you stand on top of our landfill, on top of the prairie that we've got going on the closed portion of the landfill, you can see the city of Madison's Capitol building from there. And we're located pretty far from it. So it's fun just to give you a sense of how high we are.
and that thing
That
opened
is
when
wild.
it opened in 81, right? So like it's not like it's
Yeah,
right.
back in 1985, actually. Yeah, so we've been around for a while. It's older than me. So
But not me. I was 4 when that opened, and so, and no, 85. No, I was born in 79. So 6. I was 6 when that opened. And so I did my math wrong. And so like it's so, and people that are watching this too, like 85 is whenever the Rutherford landfill opened like this. And so like it's been in most of our lifetimes watching this thing. That thing went from flat ground to being a mountain tall enough where you can see the Capitol, and that's out on the other side of the interstate. Is where that thing is, where we filled it up with garbage like that. We can be better through like personal choices, through improved communication about what to do with the stuff in our lives, and just being those hover moments that Lorenza talked about, just making those little personal choices, little nudges, things like that. The best we can, I guess. So
Absolutely. I think it's also interesting because everything you guys have said, I think just like for me, it's like that sense of like awareness of like just realizing like you are throwing away this amount of stuff a year and that is going somewhere in our community, and just like kind of not removing yourself from that thought process and like being aware that like the things we throw away do go somewhere, not just like being on that autopilot mode of like, yeah, like throwing away trash is like something we all do probably every day, many times a day, I imagine. And so I guess having that like awareness of like, especially if you can like visit the landfill or take a course or read about our local guidelines of like just kind of tuning in a bit better to that is something that I think I have noticed it in all of your answers here. And it's something that, you know, I think a lot of people don't even think about, like, oh, I'm just gonna like go about my life and like throw away this, you know, plastic bag I used at lunch, or like this piece of paper that had a note on it that I don't need anymore. But that awareness that like it stays here, a lot of it, most of it, all of it. And yeah, that I'm sure we can probably all do things a bit better. So I so appreciate you all just sharing all of your knowledge on all of this and how we can become better recyclers, better thinkers about waste and sustainability. I think I've learned a lot. It's been really informative talking to all of you and interesting, and we've covered a ton of ground. So if you had to pick, I guess, one thing that you want someone watching this to take away from this panel, what would that one thing be? I'm just going to throw this out to you guys. Whoever wants to go first can go first.
Well, first thing I thought of was that if you want to see where Away is, it's on the other side of the interstate. Make a left. It's right there. Away is where Sujata like spent a lot of her time. That's the location of Away. You know, maybe you should put like Away. This Away is here. It's the whatever the highest point is of Dane County. That's where Away is locally. And besides that, besides the like Away, we have Away locally. For recycling, follow your local guidelines. Like that's just follow those rules. If you don't know, ask, or if when in doubt, throw it out. You know, we're just that would be the as far as like recycling rules. Follow your local guidelines. When in doubt, throw it out. And yeah, that would be it for me.
I would say my takeaway, I love that. There is no away, Brian. I love that. But I would say as individuals, you do have the power to impact such a large system. You know, waste is huge, it's global, but locally we can impact what we throw away. And it's a lot like the rest of sustainability and how we see that at Sustain Dane. You know, it's not just waste, it's a healthy environment, a just economy, and equity and social well-being for everyone. So yeah, waste is actually a great entrance point so into sustainability. And so if you have found that your interest is piqued today, and I would say if you're listening to this at all, your interest is there, join us for a course or get involved otherwise at Sustain Dane. You can meet with me one-on-one to talk about your sustainability goals. If you're a business or an individual, you can, join one of our education or networking events. Allie, like you were saying, there's like this inner circle of sustainability folks in Dane County, and you can join that. Anyone can. I'd love to talk with you. And then finally, join us at our annual summit. It's our biggest day of the year. It's at Monona Terrace this year, Friday, November 4th. It's a great time, great community. And this year we have Diamond Spratling speaking on environmental justice.
Such great takeaways. I think I will round us out by just simply adding that really think about your relationship with waste. I think that's the biggest message I have to offer people. You know, what are you bringing into your life? Have you thought about what you're going to do with it when you're done. How do the choices of what you bring into your life then give you the responsibility of like, now I have to figure out how to get rid of all this stuff. And I often say on my tours or remind folks that when you put something or throw something away in the trash can, you're the last person who's ever going to touch that item. Because as people find out when they come to our landfill, it's in the garbage truck, then they dump it, and then we crush it. And that's pretty much it. So you really are ever the last person to touch it. So does that have to go in the trash bin? Is there a better or higher use for it? And as you think about your relationship with waste, I encourage people to consider doing a personal waste audit. See if you can just save your trash for even a week, and then at the end of the week, lay it all out and see what you're throwing away the most of, and where can small habit changes maybe provide you a reduction in a significant amount of, I don't know, paper Kleenexes or whatever. Because you can often do simple swaps to take out a good chunk of waste that you might be producing, whether it's Kleenexes, for example, etc. And then as Brian has said, to touring the local landfill, your local landfill is just another great thing you can do as you're thinking about your relationship with waste more and just resources. And if you can't tour one of our public tour dates that we've got open, you're also welcome to just check out the trash lab at a community event near you. We call it the landfill experience that we bring to people in a mobile exhibit. So I would say any number of those ways are some great starts for how you can be thinking about your relationship with waste. The waste audit, visiting a local landfill, trash lab, getting involved with Sustain Dane, many programming, taking Recycle Better course, etc.
I would say
Amazing.
too about the tour really quickly. It's not gross. It's not.
It doesn't smell.
It doesn't smell. So if you haven't been, you're not going to go there and be like, oh, it's so smell. It's not. Now, maybe the guy that works where the trash trucks park isn't the best judge of how things smell. But Lorenza, does it smell bad at the land? It doesn't like it, like whenever the tour is not like super gross. Like it's, so if you're interested, you should go. You're going to probably see more seagulls than what you think, but it's
Yes.
it's not that smelly of a tour. It's like totally recommend go, because like it's eye-opening. It's like that. If anything else, I think from that tour, also the Pelletary Waste Systems is the company that sorts and sells the recyclables for the city of Madison. They also offer tours. Like sometimes I lead them. You can watch a video online of what happens to the recyclables after. Equally eye-opening. Like that's what happens with the stuff after the cart. Like that's what happens with the stuff that goes in the trash can. Like that's like eye-opening. I think that's sort of like that. I didn't mean to step on what Sujata said because it was so perfect, but I just wanted to make like really encourage people again to like what the
I love this. We're debunking misconceptions
right.
about what a landfill looks
feel like
like,
we have a
smells
whole nother-
like.
We could honestly have a whole nother panel about debunking like waste myths and recycling myths.
Next year. I'll see you guys next year. Debunking trash. I don't know.
Trash talking.
Trash talking.
myths.
Debunking trash talk. Well, I can't thank you all enough for taking the time to be here, and thank you to everyone watching for taking the time to tune in. A big thanks again to Forward Theater for sponsoring this event, and make sure you check out the rest of the wonderful panels and events happening this week as part of Idea Fest. Yeah, I hope everyone had fun and learned something, and yeah, I'll see you guys soon.